Well, hello and welcome to your final session of the Leading with Purpose Emerging Leaders program. And I am absolutely delighted to be here with you for the last session. And it's been a ride. And I think ultimately what I'd say about today is the intention really is for you to look at where you were when you first started the program. And then we're going to take a look at some of the topics we covered. And in that process, you'll have an opportunity to reflect on some of the things that you discovered, some of the things that you took on, some of the things that you really learned that were really valuable. And then you'll get a real comparison to where you are today as far as how you've been able to apply those things. In the process of doing that, it really is about looking at how has this identification of purpose and leading with purpose been able to impact the things that you're committed to impacting in the world. So wherever you're at with what you did, how much you've done so far, always be given that you've got the recordings here, you can always go back and look at any of the modules that you've got. You can always go back and look at any of the workbooks. So as we go through the outline of what we did get covered today, that's, I suppose, the great news with recordings is that you can always go back and do that. But let's start with the intention for today, which really is an opportunity to celebrate your success. And I know, having spoke for not just only for myself, but I also know for a lot of women, we often do not celebrate our own accomplishments. Often we're very good at celebrating others and giving credit and acknowledgement to others, and acknowledgement of ourselves is often missing. They tend to be pretty hard on ourselves, Now that aside, the other thing that I noticed happens is we get too busy. It's not even on our radar. So it's not even like, oh, we actively don't do it because we have a negative view about doing it. It is that we're just so busy with life, doing life. And as a woman, you have multiple roles in your life, not just your work, but you've got your family, and whether you're a parent or not, or you've got parents, and there's just so many roles that you play as a woman. And because of that, for the most part, you get to the end of the day and you're like shattered. You're just like, okay, put my feet up, let me just settle and then go to bed. So then you get up and you do it all again. So look, the one thing that I want you to take out of today is the opportunity to see the value for yourself in making time for yourself, to reflect on the things that you're doing that are great. So the practice that we call it, well, I certainly have labeled it as acknowledgement. So acknowledgement is an opportunity not just to recognize the existence of success, it's being able to see what's present in any area and to be able to get it complete. So, as an Indigenous person, for example, acknowledgement of country is a recognition of the contribution and the history of Aboriginal people. And I dare say it would be the same for many of you in America, that, acknowledgement right up front, it gives you an opportunity to really take a stand for where you've been, where you are, and that becomes present. So it's not about showing up and like you got everything handled. No, acknowledgement is, I see you. I see all of you and I acknowledge everything. So we are going to start with looking at what there is to acknowledge about what you did and to celebrate what you did. And at the same time, you can make a list of the things that you noticed that you didn't get done, that you wish you could have got done, and then you can decide what you choose to do with that. Now, you can choose to go back and do things that you think you overlooked, or you do not have to. The opportunity is to really just be complete with what you did and what you didn't do. And when you can be complete about that, you're going to be free to take the next step forward with whatever it is that you're up to. So I'm going to invite you to get a pen and a piece of paper. And if you're on the recording, this might be an opportunity where you need to press pause so that you can do that. And on that piece of paper, the first thing you're going to do is start to look at everything that you want to acknowledge yourself for. The way you played the game, what you learnt, all the different activities you did, even in your life. If you look at your life over the last 8 weeks and you reflect on the things that you've accomplished, This is an opportunity for you to really just go to town, write down everything that you are really proud of that you've accomplished in the last 8 weeks. So, where do we start? So, at the top of a blank page, you're going to write down what I am proud of. And I'm just going to go back and reflect on where we started and the sessions that we covered. And as I do that, you're going to have an opportunity just to remind yourself of the things, the journey that you did take and what you did do. Now, you're welcome just to free write if there's things that you notice show up immediately about what you're proud of. And then at the end, I am going to give you a couple of minutes to pause and to expand on that list so that you can write down the things that you've been doing in the other areas of your life, whether it's with your business, what you've developed, the impact you've had, what you've done in the area of your family and your relationships. You're going to expand on that for 2 minutes, okay? But first up, let's just go back and look at where you were when we first started and what you've accomplished, okay? So the very first session we had was on the introduction to the foundations of leadership. You know, we talked about what it looks like to be a leader. We talked about what it looks like not to be a leader. And then we looked at the difference between being a leader and providing leadership. And I gave you an opportunity to look at who are the leaders that you most admire and what does leadership look like for you? What are some of the key skills that you notice that you would need to develop and provide leadership? Now, for the most part, what we unpacked was our own ordinary view of leadership based on our experience of what we've seen in the past. And that can get in the way of us being able to see our own potential as a leader. So I do have a question for you at this point, because I do know that this is a favorite part for many people. And I do want to give you an opportunity to remind yourself of the leader that you most admire and what it was that did for you. Now, if you're on the recording, I invite you to just simply press pause on the video, write that down, or go back to your workbook into that section. And I'm going to invite either Nancy or Amy to share with you the leader that they most identify and what they've noticed since that conversation. So ladies, who would like to share?
I remember it vividly, because to me it was one of the most memorable moments of the whole course. As you just, I chose Barack Obama, and I wrote down all of the qualities that I loved about him. And you said, "That's a nice description of you, Nancy." And since then, I've been noticing those qualities in myself, and I love that. It's one of the most profound things we did in this course, I think.
Yeah, fantastic. Fantastic. And Amy, how about you? What have you noticed in the leader, firstly, the leader that you chose, and then how have you noticed that's impacted your experience of being a leader with what you're up to?
Yeah, I agree with Nancy. It was the most powerful. I mean, in the year and a half we've been working with you, because we've started working with you long before this. It was the most powerful exercise we've done with you. And I had chosen Dr. Jane Goodall. And yeah, I think about it all the time. Like, I love her for her commitment to her cause, for her passion, for the fact that she just cares about other people and supporting other people and making the world a better place. And I have been reflecting on the fact that those are the qualities that drive me every day. So it's a beautiful thing, and it makes me feel it almost legitimized in some way that, like, these are valid pursuits, that if someone that I admire so much has the wherewithal to have done this for, God, she's probably been doing it for 60 years. It just kind of fuels me to keep me going in the fight that we're fighting over here. So
Mm.
yeah, it's really, really powerful.
That's wonderful. As you may or may not recall, but certainly one of the leaders that I do notice that I most admire, if I look in the world in terms of the impact, was Nelson Mandela. And of course, for me, it was a lot about courage and resilience and tenacity, but doing it in a way that was very humbling. And to me, that was when I first kind of look at that leader and I go, well, there's definitely a gap in my experience of myself, certainly in the generosity and the resilience, and but certainly my life is a lot like that. But in the context of women, I do think also it's nice to see who you most emulate. And I think one of the breakthroughs I've even had during this program, because every time I do a program, I'm reliving it for myself and expanding it for myself. And, I was starkly reminded especially last week, when we did the module on communication and being a storyteller. And of course, what naturally showed up for me was the journey that I've taken as a storyteller, and the dream that I had when I was 8 years old watching Oprah, and just was so in awe of who she was for people. And it didn't occur to me until very late on that was the case, until, much later on I started doing storytelling on stage. So it was, but I think the opportunity in that particular section and the point of that module is for you to know that the choice of leader is who you are. You only see those qualities because they're qualities in you. And the opportunity at this point is to know that if you can take that forward, when you get up each and every day, each and every morning, we have an opportunity to choose life. And that can be really difficult when you are dealing with a lot of different stuff in life. Not only what you're dealing with personally in your life, but also what you're dealing with in the world. And let's say right now, in your country in particular, there are a lot of challenges and equally as much inspiration, but it can be difficult. But when you wake up in the morning and you remind yourself of the leader that you most admire, and you know that they're the qualities that you embody, you have an opportunity to dress, present, bring the presence of that to life. So I want to acknowledge you for being able to identify that and not just do it as I really admire that. No. You really did get that is who you are in the world. So that was the first part of the journey. And then what we did after we talked about leadership, is the thing that you most described was the values that those leaders emulate. And so then what you did is you took a look at the values that are most important to you and how you want to live your life, and also the stand that you take for others. Now that conversation naturally transitioned to our second session, or when we talked about leading with purpose. So when we lead with purpose, it usually is on the foundation of our vision and the values that are deeply important to us as a leader. We did talk about the barriers to purpose, called some of the myths that we know, like our beliefs about what purpose is, and it's got to be grandiose, and it has to be, a major impact in the world, and you've got to have a major life tragedy for you to discover purpose. And when we removed all of the beliefs and what we know to be true from what we've been taught or learnt about purpose, then you had an opportunity to discover exactly what purpose is for you. Your purpose, you discovered, is about the impact you have on others. And there was two ways that you looked at that. Firstly, you looked at, why are you here? What is the difference you really want to make? And then you looked at, what is the problem that you want to solve? And when you looked at the problem you want to solve, it was obvious that there was a certain group of people that you were committed to having an impact on. And when you marry the two of those things up, you were able to identify your purpose, which ultimately is described by the impact you have in the world. Now, those first two modules were fundamentally about identifying your commitment as a leader. And in leadership, we often call that your leadership brand. In business, we called it your foundations of your brand. It includes your vision, your values, your mission, and your purpose. And so you have a very clear view about what it is that you're committed to in the world. So that was the first two modules. And then after you got clear about the direction you're heading, all of those four things, and the mission, which describes what you do, like how do you go from where you are today to where you want to be, you have a unique set of skills. And so you took a look at what it was that you do and what makes you unique, not just based on how you make people feel, but your talent. Now, you might not even look at in this section, when you look at what there is to reflect on and reflecting on success, some of you for the first time got exactly what it is that you're really great at, and that you're able to shine a light on your strengths and your talents. Now, what does that mean? Well, you just then can surround yourself with people who have other skills so that you can focus on what it is that you did well. Now, where did we go from there? Well, then we looked at how do you close the gap, and we called that the A game. So what is the pathway? What are the actions that you're going to take to close the gap between where you are today and where you want to be? So we closed that gap. We talked about the A game practices, which is what's your attention on. Then we looked at what are the simple actions you could take. That's when we first started talking about the practice of acknowledgement. What do you need to acknowledge about yourself? What do you need to acknowledge about others? And then the last part was about accountability, which when you look from, even if you look at the end of your day, you know, when you look back at what you did and what you did not do, you can't change what's already happened. All you can do is look at what could I do differently here? What could I do that would change what's occurring out there, regardless of how other people are? So that whole module was about giving you a set of practices that allows you to close the gap no matter where you are. Regardless of how much change or how much you have to deal with in life, you have a set of practices that allows you to close that gap. Now, during that module, you would have gone to work on some of your own action planning. And you would have been able to take actions that aligned with your commitment. So I'm going to give you an opportunity at this part to take a look now at what are some of the accomplishments you had when you reflect on some of the actions that you've taken that are consistent with your purpose, and what are some of the results that you've accomplished. Now, if you're on the video, good opportunity to press pause here. And as you press pause, I invite you to write down what are some of the results or actions. It could be just actions that you've taken that do connect with your purpose, that do connect with your vision, that do connect with your values, and what are some of the results you've accomplished. Now, of course, the benefit here is that we have Amy and Nancy to share with you, so you can get a sense of what that looks like. So, Amy, Nance, what are some of the things that you've noticed that are actions that you've taken that have been really consistent with your mission, that have made a big difference for you?
I think for me, one of the big things that and it didn't even occur to me till we just started talking now, but this happened during the course of this session, is that Amy and I took pride in and acknowledged the fact that we are storytellers, and that is a skill that we can share with people. We've built this community on our power passionistas and the knowledge that you all have, and that's a beautiful thing. But we always sort of take the back seat and say they're the experts. We're just giving them the platform, and we actually in the last few weeks stepped into our power and said, you know what, we have this skill that we can share too. And so we started making time to make phone calls and reach out to women and make calls. And I think so far about 75% of the women we've talked to have signed on to one form or other of the program. And it's like, yeah, we took the action, we see the results, and I'm very proud of that.
Yeah, it's fantastic.
And I think that has happened because we're so clear on our purpose.
Mm.
You know, we know what our mission is. We know who we want to give a platform to, and we know the benefit that it gives to the other women. And so it's easy. You know, I remember a long time ago, we interviewed someone about selling. And we were like, we don't know how to sell. We're not salespeople. And she, at the time, we had like the subscription box was our big offer. And she said, is it a product that's of value to people? Like, is it a good product? And we said, yeah. And she's like, well, then you're not asking them for something. You're offering them something that's of value to them. And I think Nancy and I have had products or, you know, opportunities along the way. But I feel like with everything we've built between the sisterhood and this new Power Passionistas program, like I 100% feel the value and believe in the value. I believe in the value of the community. I believe in the value of the Power Passionistas. And so I finally understand her point about like, Oh, we actually have not made a single call where we're trying to sell anybody anything. We actually are just updating people and asking them for their feedback. And before we get off the phone, they're like, well, I want to be a part of that. It's like, oh, well, that wasn't why we called you. Um, and so it takes the sales out of things when it's just something you believe in and you're just sharing with people. And I think all the actions that we've done leading up to this course with you and then through the course have helped us get to that place.
That's brilliant. I think there's a couple of things that I certainly noticed is that when you take certain actions, then the taking of the action, whilst you don't always see the direct correlation, there are never any accidents with the way in which you go about taking the actions. And even if we look at this program, for example, in the timing of the program and everything that you've done in the background to make this happen, that you've not just been here to make it happen in service of the people that are in the group, right? But you have been participating. You have each session done the work, each session. So there is never any accidents in the way that the brain evolves and the thinking and the evolution of our actions as a result of the thinking that we do. And certain things will create new openings, and in that new opening, then we take a new action. And whilst it hasn't been spoken in this conversation yet, and certainly if you're in the recording, I invite you to really reflect on that particular part of it so that you can start to see and acknowledge yourself for the progress that you've made inside of doing various parts of the activities. But the thing that I'm very present to with the both of you is that you have just recently launched a storytelling program. Now, that in itself says a lot about playing right to your strengths and who you are and how other people see you. And of course, people would want to do that with you, and I think that's a massive accomplishment and a big win to celebrate.
Thank you. Wouldn't have been made it happen without you. I mean, I look back at January 2023 and where we were, and then I look back at where we are now, and it's just a completely different world. And you really opened up so much of our thinking. So
Thank you.
grateful.
Okay, so where did we go from here? So if you haven't completed your list for what you've accomplished so far, please do press pause and make sure you do that, okay? Where we went from there was then about when you go out in life and you start taking action and you're clear about what it is that you want and need, at that point, what you're ultimately dealing with is how do you deal powerfully with what you walk into in the world? How do you show up? A lot of people say, right? How do you do that when, you get some people who, certainly in your country, I kind of looked just recently about the way that Donald Trump interacted with those, journalists on stage and how rude he was about the first question. And, I just kind of look at that and I go, oh my God, so got lucky. She was very composed and very responsible in the way that she responded to a human being like that. And that takes something. And of course, when you're sitting there watching things like that, because you're not the person on stage, it's very easy to sit there and be very ropeable about that. And I was certainly on my high horse, let me tell you. So, but then how do you deal powerfully like that? That word composed is really one of the benefits of developing this skill of resilience. So what we did in the fourth module was we talked about resilience and the 6 different domains of resilience, which were the science-backed areas, which included composure was one of them. We talked about things like mindfulness. We talked about health, how important health is in being able to, certainly in the gut-brain connection and how it impacts our mindset. And we talked about mindset. We talked about what motivates us to all those different areas. And one of those areas that comes up very high for women in particular was the area of collaboration. The opportunity to give help as much as it is about asking for help. And what I'm pretty sure most of you will have discovered at that point is that as women, we're not always great at asking for help. And we are very good at wanting to offer help. So during that session, it really was an opportunity to look at where are the opportunities for me to be able to ask for help, and what would I even ask for help on? So that does develop a level of resilience where you can kind of challenge the ways that you'd normally go about doing things. Now, why? Well, because when you've got that heightened sense of resilience in that kind of approach, you've got a greater chance of fulfilling on the things that you're committed to fulfilling on. So I do want to give you an opportunity at that point just to look at where did you expand yourself when it comes to developing resilience? Where did you go beyond where you would normally go? What actions did you take that you noticed that you hadn't been taking that you were more likely to take? Where were you more courageous? Or where did you start to turn obstacles into opportunities? Did you look at health, or did you? So I'm going to just give you a couple of minutes to make some notes for yourself about what that was. And again, I'm going to give you an opportunity to share from what it was that you noticed that really benefited you. Amy or Nancy?
I think for me, I concentrated a lot on my health and self-care. Beginning of this course was right around the time we went to New York, and that was actually a big turning point for me. I was very sick last year, and the first few months of this year, I think I was kind of holding myself back, afraid to test my limits. And when we were in New York, that fresh energy sort of made me forget that I was supposed to be careful. And there was one day I was telling someone recently that I checked it. For some reason, I decided to check our steps one day in New York, and there was a day that Amy and I walked 8.5 miles around New York City.
You did that one day?
That one day we walked 8.5 miles, and I was like, I got back and I was like, okay, I'm fine. Like, and I need to stop, coddling myself and pretending that I'm not well enough to exercise and take care of myself. So I've been focusing more really on getting back into exercising and really, taking care of myself that way. And also we're doing Lauren's permission slips course right now. And so I've been letting myself every morning, I've been using her meditation and trying to ease into my day a little bit. And so, yeah, I've really been focusing on my health lately, which is good.
Good to hear.
That's good to hear. I
It's
need to.
important for most women. Self-care is the thing we put on the back burner. And, I think it was that session that we talked about how easy it is to put everybody else's needs ahead of our own. And then we don't, we've got no cup, the cup kind of dries up. So that's really great. And what about for you, Amy?
I think for me, it's been about pacing myself more with what we're building in the community, and the excitement leading up to it, and the excitement of the first month or two where it was like, gotta go, gotta build it. And we did a tarot reading with Dr. Bird last week, a live tarot reading in the community, and she was like, you can't control everything that's going to happen. You gotta let it happen. It's happening. You built it, and now it's happening. And now you have to let it happen and give it the space to happen. And so feeling like we birthed the baby, and now we have to let the baby learn to crawl, and then the baby will learn to walk. And we always say we're in this for the long game, and it's easy sometimes to jump ahead a year and go like, okay, we should be there. And it's like, no, we should be exactly where we are. And so for me, it's about the resilience of not letting the days where it's not meeting my expectations get me down, when it's like it's so surpassed what we thought it would be at this point already, that all I need to do is just let it be and give it the space that gives me the space to just do the things I need to do for myself and for the company and for Nancy and my boyfriend and and myself, and not feel so like I'm trying to rein everything in or push things forward and try.
Yeah, it's wonderful. I do think this is an opportunity to reflect, in particular, about progress that you make in taking good care of oneself. And it's certainly what I've noticed in that area is it's about identifying simple practices that you can do, and then introducing, elevating those practices as you go forward. Because the more you give yourself in self-care, the more you get back, and it's a great lesson for all of us to learn. It's not about, I think we even talked about the fact that it's not about this hard driven resilience is toughen up, you can do this. No, 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 no. No, it's quite the opposite. It is really taking care of oneself, because otherwise burnout does prevail.
Mhm. Yeah.
Yep. Now, once you've got the skills, or you can identify the development of resilience in that way, then that's a never-ending game based on wherever you're at and a regular practice. But then once you've got that skill, the final skill that we looked at was communication. What is it? How do I communicate in a way that actually allows me to accomplish the outcome that I'm committed to accomplishing? So we talked in that final module about creating a conversation that aligns others on your vision. And we used some examples that are well known on people who have done that really successfully and in different approaches. And of course, Martin Luther King Jr. is probably one of the ones that we know really well. But equally, you could go to, there was the Greta Thunberg, who's, through her speaking, she really mobilized millions on climate change at such a very young age. So it's not like she needed to be masterful in leadership and she didn't need to have a title, and no, just through her speaking. Now, of course, then I shared with you some other videos and you had the option of looking at some of those. The one was about Oprah's Golden Globe speech and the power of her speaking, her own story inside of that conversation, but her commitment and evidence of her commitment in the world and what she wants to create for others. So this part of it ultimately is, what is there for you to say in how you can speak a future into existence to create that future? Because if we get stuck based on the way that it is, things do not change. But speaking is your access to having things change. And through that, you really discovered the power of storytelling as storytellers and the journey a storyteller takes. And you can apply that module, that process, and being able to do that. But the thing that really makes the biggest difference, which we talked about, is being able to identify the conversations that you have with yourself that limit you or hold you back from being able to have those conversations out in the world and be the voice that you're committed to being. See, it's those conversations that we have with ourselves about ourselves, conversations we have with ourselves about the situation and others, that limits the opportunity to create our speaking in a way that causes new futures to happen. So I'm going to give you an opportunity here to reflect on what you learned, what you noticed, what you discovered, how you applied it. What do you notice in particular about the conversations that you've been able to have with people about the vision, about your purpose, and how has that altered the results that you've created? So again, if you're on the recording, just take a minute just to stop and reflect on that for yourself and notice what has happened, where maybe you've gone and had conversations that in the past you were a little bit afraid to make, or anything like that. So ladies, what would you like to share and acknowledge about the conversations that you've been having, and how have they been creating new futures?
Wow. I think that the conversations we've been having lately have been really inspiring and uplifting. And I think, again, just solidifying that we're on the right track, because um, the feedback that we're getting is, like with the storyteller workshop, like, well, of course I want to be involved with that, and so again, stepping into owning that. And I think that, talking about the internal voices, I am constantly telling myself, I'm too shy, I'm too anxious with people, I'm not smart enough, I'm this, I'm constantly telling myself things like that. And then I hear myself talking to these people and I see the reaction to it. And I'm like, no, I'm none of those things anymore. I maybe used to be. but I'm not anymore.
That's great. That's great. Amy?
Yeah, I agree with all of that. And I also think for me, it's been more about the listening, which, this platform, this community, everything that Nancy and I have done with the Passionistas project is about giving women the space to tell their own stories, unfiltered through us and through our lens. And what's happening here, to bring up this, campaign again, what's happening here with Vice President Harris is energizing everybody, but it's a very complicated topic for women of color. They're excited, but it comes with fears that they've expressed to us and concerns that they've expressed to us about society. And for me, it's bringing us back around to, we're going to do a series of events around this Project 2025 idea. And the conclusion we came to today is this isn't something for Nancy and I to lead. This is the platform to give to a few women in our community who are really knowledgeable about these issues, have dedicated their lives to these issues, and we need to turn the space over to them to do it. And once we did that, then it felt right and authentic to our purpose and our mission. And so for me, it's also knowing when to speak and when to be the ones communicating, and knowing when to be the ones to step back and to listen and to give the space to the women with the knowledge and the experience and to learn from them.
Yeah, it's beautiful. The listening aspect was one of the ones that we did cover in that session, and it is a very powerful and much needed practice, because often we feel like in the space when things are not getting resolved, it is often because the person doesn't have the experience of being heard, and giving somebody the space to be heard allows them to then move forward. But until someone hears what they have to say, then there is no moving forward. And as leaders, it is the skill of listening is beyond just giving other people the opportunity to speak, but it is about our words have power. And even if you don't talk, the conversations that shape our listening, that is how we listen to others, does determine success and or not. And it is a skill that takes constant attention. It's being able to listen with purpose, or listen for someone else's purpose, because sometimes it's hard to see. Other people cannot see for themselves. And in a community, especially, if you can listen for purpose in someone else, you're able to give that to them. It's just a remarkable skill. So I am going to give you an opportunity now, really just to take a minute to reflect on everything that you've accomplished, and you again press pause and just take 1 minute to write down all the things that you're really proud of. Okay. And then we're going to come back, and I'm going to have you then look at, where are you now? So what is the thing that if you look at what are you committed to creating in fulfilling on your purpose, where are the gaps? Like, what can you see is the things that either you didn't get done that you wanted to get done, or you committed to getting done, or any regrets or anything that you didn't do or wish you had done. And so I am going to give you a minute just to reflect for yourself on where you are with that. And you can communicate from one of two places. You can look at what I did do. Maybe I didn't do that module. I didn't go back, but I'm going to go back and do that. Or you can look at, okay, this is now the gap. I can see here's what's next for me, and what am I committed to creating. So you have an opportunity to look at, what is it that's there now for you? What did you either not get done, wish you had got done, or are now looking to get done that you haven't yet got done? So either one of you want to share?
I will be honest, there were many times through this course that after the end of the class, I was like, okay, I'm going to sit down with the workbook this weekend and I'm going to go through it and I'm going to write all the things. And then I didn't. And so I actually still want to carve out the time to do that because I know it's important. And I know it will be helpful. And I know that I need to carve out more time for myself because I don't do that enough. And I know that would be good. But as far as where we are with the business, I'm very happy with where we are with the business, and I just want to keep the momentum going that we have found in the last few weeks. And I think we're exactly right where we're supposed to be.
Excellent. I'm going to give you, that's really great. And I love how when you wrapped up the wish you had it done and then you went, it's actually really, it's what it's really about is that you make sure you're getting time for you. Because honestly, doing the work, that's all that is. So you did what you did and you got what you got,
Right.
which is fantastic. And I'd say that doing the work on the workbook going back may not necessarily be required. What is required, though, I think, is what you said, which is noticing for yourself that actually what it's about is making sure you take time for you.
Yeah.
That's great. And so I'm going to give you a bit of a different spin on it and now look from where right now could you say that there is an action you really want to take and you haven't taken it or would like to take it that you know would make a difference and it hasn't happened yet?
Interesting.
And you can also ask the question from the same place called.
Yeah. No. I like that question. I mean, the first thing that popped into my mind is just, and I agree with you. Like this is another lesson you taught us a long time ago, which is, a small group of people can have the biggest impact. And so as we're growing, I'm really proud of how much of an impact we're having as we're still in our infancy. But the first thing that popped into my head was getting on a bigger stage, getting on a platform where overcoming my fear of speaking, and Nancy's hesitation to speak, and getting on a bigger stage where we are sharing more of our message, because the feedback that everybody's giving us is we are creating something unique. The more we watch these calls that are happening, there's lots of calls happening here in America that are, white women for Kamala Harris and Black women for Kamala Harris and Jewish women for Kamala Harris, but there's not diverse women for Kamala Harris, which is what diverse women is what we're creating in every aspect of life. And it's unique, and and I want to step out of whatever holds me back from appearing on MSNBC with Rachel Maddow and talking about this so that we're amplifying our voice, but really amplifying the community and getting that out on a bigger level, just
Good.
so that we can help more people.
Yes. And that is a great insight. Really, really fantastic insight. So, when's it going to happen?
By the end of the year.
Great. Great. Yes. You are both leaders, and I'm not speaking obviously, folks, to just Amy and Nancy, but you are leaders, and the commitment you have to make a difference will come from you being that leader, being the voice that allows others to step up, being Gloria Steinem, who is publicly very visible in her movement of the women's liberation in particular. But it didn't happen by her sitting back and just letting other people do it. No, it came because there was a willingness to stand up and speak. And your doing that is of service to others. No matter what the mission is for you in this program and in this community, It is about letting go of all the concern you have about what you think about yourself and what you think about others, and getting the voice of your mission out. And I do see an opportunity specifically here to notice that often what holds you back will not necessarily be you, about you. Sometimes it's just the directing your attention on the message. See, if you're clear about even if you go back to the last module on the videos of Martin Luther King Jr. or Oprah as an example, and then you look at that, quite frankly, all those of you who are in the program, in the community, go and do the program with Amy and Nancy on storytelling, because it's where you will get to do this work that I'm pointing to. But when you do the work to craft the message, which is about the mission, and you use those aspects that we talked about in the first module, which was, what is the vision you have? Like Martin Luther King's, honestly, his story really articulates every one of these. What is the vision you have of the future? I have a dream that one day, and you paint the picture of that one day, we will walk, and then you point to the opportunity of what that presents. And at that point, you really are looking from the values that you have as a commitment and why you're doing this, and your purpose gets created, the impact we're committed to having for the people. And your message is then not about you, it is about what you see possible for the people with whom you're talking about. And when you write that message and you craft that, then speaking becomes very natural. Like the pull to get on stage, the pull to speak publicly, the pull happens more than the resistance. So right now, if any one of you, if you right now, as you're here listening to this, can see that you're not being for yourself the Oprah in the Golden Globes talk, you not for yourself the Martin Luther King Jr., you for yourself and not the voice of the Gloria Steinem or whoever it is for you, then don't worry about you. Don't worry about you. You can be as messed up as you want. You can be as shy as you want. You can be, as crazy and stupid as you want, or small as you want, or black as you want, or white as you want, or disabled as you want, like whatever. It really, that does not matter. What matters is get it crafted, get in Amy and Nancy's program on storytelling and start practicing. Because when you can park all that stuff and you can just speak about what you're passionate about, then you can walk off that stage and then be scared again. Helen Mirren, remember Helen Mirren, on stage, speak, off stage, freaking out. I think I mentioned in the last module, the opportunity really to speak is terrifying. When I was 20 and I was asked to represent the company that I worked for on their Miss Australia pageant, I was shit scared. I had no idea what I was doing. And the whole time was looking at everything I could do to try to not be scared. And then on the moment of being on stage and getting the recognition, in that moment, I was not terrified. All I was present to was what was occurring in that moment. But the second I stepped off, of course I was terrified again. You're never not going to be scared. Never. You're always going to be afraid. So, in closing, I do want to congratulate you really on everything you did do to get from where you are at the beginning to being here where you are today, everything you gave of yourself to show up and do the recordings and do the workbook activities and all the actions that you've been taking in your life, and quite frankly, showing up for somebody else, including yourself. And I just invite you now to go and really, with the people around you, more importantly, is to not keep yourself small for yourself, and to share what you've accomplished for yourself with the people who are close and dear to you. Because when you do that, you're immediately jumping out of your own concern for yourself and what you have not done. And most importantly, get into Amy and Nancy's program about storytelling, because it will help you craft the message that you're committed to having and getting, whether it's a book or a talk or whatever that is for you out there in the world, and go and do that. And I look forward to seeing you around in the community. Thank you for being here.